Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Nick Gowing, and I'm going to start on bang on time because in an hour there's an enormous amount to get through, and many of you will want to engage with this critical question about how growth is driven through sustainability. There have been so many sessions over the last few years, particularly at the World Economic Forum, about sustainability, about particularly how growth can be achieved through sustainability. Everyone looking forward to the future, saying, we must do this, we will do that. How can we transform? Now it seems to us that we need to inject a degree of audit into what has been done, what is being done, what successes there have been, what difficulties there have been as well. So as I've shared with all the panelists, let's make this an audit of the challenges you faced, the positive side, the negative side as well, and where we're going in the next few months and years with that principle of how the business model is transformed to create both sustainability, growth, and of course, guarantee profit and success as well. In other words, it doesn't have to be seen as a negative. First off, I thought you'd like to hear the kind of companies and institutions they're all involved in. So I've asked them in less than a minute to describe the business they are in before we get into the individual audits. Zhengrong.
Yeah. Good morning, or good afternoon, everybody. I'm founder, chairman, and CEO of Suntech Power, which is a company to produce semiconductor device to convert sun energy into electricity. Our company started about 10 years ago, and we had enormous growth in the past 10 years. And give an idea, in the last 10 years, we cumulatively already delivered 500 megawatt equivalent coal-fired power plants. So this year alone, we'll deliver 3 equivalent 500 megawatt coal-fired power plant. So that's what I already tell you how this business grows. Is not we provide a solution for sustainability. Is not a cost. Actually, is a profit business. Thank you.
Thank you. Caio Koch-Weser.
I'm K.R. Sridhar, CEO and founder of Bloom Energy. What we do is to build energy servers. These are boxes about the size of a shipping container that sit outside a building. They take any fuel, fossil or renewable, convert that into electricity at very high efficiency, and directly deliver it to the building, thereby offering you somewhere in the neighborhood of 40% carbon reduction because of efficiencies if you use fossil fuel like natural gas, and 100% clean if you use a biogas, and the system is capable of using both. We are serving very large industrial customers right now in California, like Walmart, Coca-Cola, eBay, Google, and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Thanks, Caio. Harry Bhatia.
Good afternoon. I'm the founder and co-chair of Jubilant Bhartia Group. We have investment in many different industries, the largest being in life sciences. So we are India's largest contract research and manufacturing organization. And with almost 1,200 people doing research, with 10 manufacturing locations in India and 4 in North America. The second part of our business is in the oil exploration, where we have large discoveries of gas and oil, mainly located in India. Thirdly, in food services and retail. We are India's largest food service company.
Jim Rogers, not everyone will have been at your mentor session where you've been explaining the business of being a chief executive for 22 years. But just for those who are not familiar with you and weren't at your previous session, give us a minute about Duke Energy, please.
Yes. I'm Jim Rogers, and chairman and CEO of Duke Energy. And our company is one of the largest power producers in the United States. We have operations in South America. We're predominantly hydro facilities there. We're a company that has tried to lead the way in terms of carbon legislation in our country, and we've had pretty tough sledding to get that done over the last several years and still not done. But most importantly, we're a company that's totally transforming our business and redefining the boundaries of our business. We are retiring old coal plants and building one of the world's largest and most efficient coal gasification facilities. We're building gas plants. We've invested in wind. We've invested in solar. We've invested in every way you can generate electricity because we believe that portfolio is critical. And as we build a bridge to the low-carbon world, each of these technologies need further development to operate in a low-carbon world.
Jim, thanks. Zheng Sui.
I'm the former vice chairman of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, and now I'm officially retired, but I still have many hats. I don't want to waste your time. But what I'm doing now, one of my jobs is promoting green economy in China. By my definition, green economy is the integration of low-carbon economy, cycling economy, and ecological economy. My work is the main three. One is raising the efficiency of utilizing fossil energy. Second is promoting developing the new energy business. Third is promoting low carbon finance, including carbon trade and carbon tax.
Zheng Sui, thank you very much. Let me help frame the discussion a bit further. There are many documents I could quote from, but I just happen to have with me the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, the Vision 2050, and the considered view of many chairs and CEOs who are members of that organization, that there are massive opportunities, and I'm quoting here, to do more with less, to create value, to prosper, and to advance the human condition. Business as usual cannot get us to sustainability or secure economic and social prosperity. Radical change is vital, and it's got to start now. Within that framework, I've asked each of the panelists to talk for up to 5 minutes about their experiences, both positive and negative, and how they've had to move with the realities of adapting their business models. Let's go first to Zhengrong.
Thank you. We are working in the photovoltaic industry, produce solar panels. At this moment, the photovoltaic industry is still a subsidized industry. Means, government has to subsidize electricity price to support industry to be profitable. So then I would like, from this point of view, I would like actually more and more governments realize the importance of promoting green economy. And as we know in the past, there's a lot of discussions about climate change in the Copenhagen conference. People say even in that conference, climate issues being collapsed and so on. But there may be debating on that issue and on the environmental issue. But what we see continuously from our sector, from the increased government to provide subsidy for solar, is all based on, all governments realize and agreed this is a new sector for economic growth. So they all agree on green economy. So I think that's really good, for whatever motivation. So now we are heading into the right direction. And so that's why, even during financial crisis, we see our sector, solar sector, only had probably 1.5 quarter downturn and quickly pick up. Now is entering another, mood of demand is far ahead of supply in situation. And secondly, I would like to talk what is multi-international companies, from our point of view, what they are doing. So I think many multi-international companies, they start focus on monitoring this green, or renewable energy industry, like solar. And I think they have two motivations. The first motivation, they see is a new investment for the future business. So they start to invest in solar power plants or windmill plants. in each countries. And secondly, they are studying whether or not to entering even manufacture business of this renewable energy industry like solar. Companies like LG, Samsung, TSMC, and all these semiconductor-based big companies now start to move into this direction. So that also indicated, a renewable energy, solar, and a green economy is really the focus of many MNC companies. The thirdly is just look at what we're doing as a company. And we're producing photovoltaic solar panels as a product, as I said, to provide solutions to the sustainable future. And but also, as we realize, we're actually doing three things in the company. The first thing what we're doing, we spend a lot of effort to educate government and as well as general public about the importance and the urgency of promoting green lifestyle. And because what I personally realized, in China, like Chinese people's lifestyle has been improved dramatically, but also we realize the waste of life is also increased dramatically. So a good lifestyle does not mean we have to waste. So I think China needs to change our the way of living and really change our lifestyle to a green style. So I think 20 years ago or 30 years ago, that type of lifestyle we had was actually very, very low carbon. And also I keep saying China had a 5,000 years civil history, and all our ancestors, 4,800 years, their lifestyle was renewable and sustainable. So we have to change the way we live. Secondly, as a company, is our own practice. And many companies, they probably only focus on profitability, and even R&D on their core product or business or technology. They less focus on this environmental issue, emission issue, and there's a new word for that. It's called clean production. Clean production is actually all about reduce, recycle, and reuse. So it's very important, reduce means during design stage, we should try to minimize usage of, chemicals, energy, and also other materials. So then even during production, we need to produce waste and so on. We should try to recycle and reuse them. This is actually is really a positive direction, because while on one hand, we try to protect the environment and reduce the resource. On the other hand, is generate profit for the company. So I think it's not contradictory again. And finally, as a company, we should thinking sustainability. Is my philosophy. I always thinking we need to have thorough solution to whatever problems we're facing. Because if we only have temporarily thinking to fix problem temporarily, so I think we leave the problem for the future. So now I think it's time for all of us to think the thorough solution to resolve the problem we're facing. As an entrepreneur, it has been always my philosophy or learning after being an entrepreneur 10 years ago. As a company, you should always provide solutions to the problem of society, a problem of a country, a problem of a future, and a problem of humanity. Thank you.
Dr. Shi, thank you very much. Hari Bhatia, let's move on to the Indian experience now. How do you think the sustainability imperative is transforming the way you've operated and also your country is moving?
Yeah. Thank you, Nick. I'll share two experiences. One which started almost 25 years back when we set up the first company, which founded the first company, which was to make chemicals You know, in the early 80s, India was very constrained of resources in terms of petroleum feedstocks. And at that time, we found that India, being a very large producer of sugar, they also used to produce as a byproduct a lot of molasses. And at that time, we created a new business model where we started to use molasses to make ethanol, and then ethanol as a feedstock to create a large number of chemicals. Of course, the technology was available, but the innovation was really to fit in different processes to produce products which were normally produced from petroleum feedstock. Now, till date, we continue to operate on this basis. And we started as a small operation almost 25 years back. Today, using technology, innovation, probably more research and development in using the green ethanol to really produce value-added pharmaceutical products which are, and in that we acquired global leadership and cost leadership. So really, at some point, when you have constraints, and I think that constraints forces you to innovate. And so India is constrained about petroleum feedstock being not being available, I think, was one reason for us to really look at this opportunity to create a business model which was based on completely renewable feedstock. If you look at the way sugarcane is grown, the only raw material mainly is water and sun. So I think that gave us a lot of confidence in the early stage that we could take a completely different technology, produce the same end product, and if you put enough research and development resources behind it, you could even get cost leadership. So today we compete with companies who produce the same product using petroleum feedstock, but really we are today lower in cost. So I think that mindset is very important. So constraint gives you a mindset. The second thing that I wanted to share was in our business model in the food service business. Normally, a company, when looks at sustainability, you look at the economic part of it, you look at the environment, and then, of course, you look at the social part of it. Now, when you look at the economic part of it, it's a no-brainer that if you continue to reduce cost, recycle products, ultimately it goes to your bottom line, and of course, it optimizes the use of resources. Secondly, on the environment side, there are huge regulations now. So it's almost like license to operate. There is activism, there is NGOs operating wherever you are. So you actually start responding to what they do and then build your sustainability model around it. But what we found very interesting in this experiment that we started to do with our food service business is, if you look at India today, the social needs in terms of education and skill development are very unique. In India, almost 88% of the people go to work directly from school because our enrollment ratio is only about 12% right now. So school dropouts are very high, and they need to find jobs in the informal or in the formal economy directly going from school. Now, so how do you skill them? Because the transition from school to workplace is a tough part of it, where these kids who come from very poor background have very poor mentorship on employability, and the challenge is always how do they get the social skills, ability to get technical skills to really find job. Today in India, while there are a lot of jobs available, there is a huge shortage of skilled manpower. Now, in the food service business, we hire almost 12,000 people every year because the turnover is almost 100%. Because these kids come and join, they get skilled, and they find other jobs. So we started going into the rural areas and starting to look at people who have passed out of class 8 and started putting a capsule of 3-month course on skill development, you'll be amazed that in these 3 months, they acquire fantastic skills where when they go into the job market, their chances of getting a job is almost as high as 80 to 90%. So we thought this is an interesting model where we could apply sustainability in a shared value so that the company benefits in terms of creating skilled manpower and the society benefits. And I think there is a huge shared value. There's an intersection of the interest of both society and the company. So strategically we found it's a very useful thing to do.
Thank you, Harry. Let's move on with Caio Koch-Weser now. Your view, given the way you've had to move your business forward and then become more public about what you're doing as you've developed the technology.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. So, let me take 30 seconds to talk about the two words that we're talking about here, sustainability and growth. I found a beautiful poster that sort of summarizes it for me. Don't think of the planet as being handed over to you by your parents. Think about it as it being lent to you by your children. Okay, that sort of defines sustainability for all of us. That's number one. If you look at growth then, we got to think about growth and hypergrowth from our children's perspective. Take the year 2050, there'll be twice the population that needs the same kind of stuff that we have. Between the people today that don't have access to marketable energy and the population growth, another 4 billion people are going to look for ways to get the kind of marketed energy we all consume. So the challenge for us is, how can our children leave the planet as they saw it or better than they saw it for their children, but still have this kind of a lifestyle where they go? And the answer is fairly simple, because there are models out there that have shown hypergrowth with sustainability. Take, for example, computing. If only mainframes were the way that we could do computing and create the kind of lifestyle that we have all created, then the amount of air conditioning that needs to go into those big supercomputers alone would consume a very significant percentage of what we all consume. The BlackBerries and the iPhones and the PCs that we have with us do not require that. It was a paradigm shift that allowed computing to hypergrow. Take, for example, telecom. If we needed copper lines to penetrate the levels at which we are able to have cell phones, copper's prices will not be where they are today. It would not be sustainable. What happened, you all know. It was a leapfrogging of technology. It was something that happened. And to give you an example, there were 21 landlines average for 100 people on the planet after 70, 80 years of landline telephones being shown. And within the first 10 years of cell phones, there were 98 cell phones for 100 people on this planet. It happened without much of a footprint because of technology. So here the question is, in energy, what is that? And can it be cost effective? Because the two key things, when you look at computing as well as telecom, is access and affordability. The only way you're going to get hypergrowth are those two key things. You need access without too much capital. They both afforded that. You needed affordability compared to where the price points were. We all know that the cell phone cost by the second in India, for example, not by the minute, is far cheaper than a landline would have ever provided us. That's what allowed for that to happen. Can that happen in energy? Is that possible? Think about when we talk about sustainability and green. What needs to happen is, think of a black box, whatever that box is. Energy needs to go in. Less energy needs to go in for more electricity to come out. Isn't that what green is about? Otherwise, it's not green. It should take less to build a box than what was conventionally being done. That's what green is from a product design perspective. The use of that electricity should stretch a lot more because you have a lot more efficient devices that use it than what used to use it. If that's the paradigm of using less to get more And if you're using a technology solution that is not an archaic 100-year-old technology that has nowhere to go, but newer technologies that have the equivalent of the Moore's law, we don't know what the law is, but the equivalent of the Moore's law, then how is it that we need to think about a green economy and a sustainable economy? It's the simple economics. Make the price lower, the volume will go up, it'll bring down the price further. That's what happened in computing. That's exactly what happened in telecom. What we adapted to is, while we were building the company and the product was about to come out, there was this worldwide frenzy of feed-in tariffs and subsidies that will stay on forever and give you very high prices just because you have a green product. We totally dismissed that idea. We said subsidy is a feeding bottle and not an addiction bottle. Okay? You need subsidy. Very clearly, the first mini computers and the first cell phones were expensive, and you need to bring the price down. But if you cannot get rid of that feeding bottle, then you don't have a product that's sustainable. You don't have a product for growth. You don't have a product for prime time. So we had to adopt to that model and start looking at, now that we have proven that we have a technology that works, and it works economically with subsidy, so it meets the bottom line as well as the carbon line, how do we now create the product that will meet both without the need for a subsidy? So that's what we have been working towards. And as a product, what we try to do is these boxes don't require the capital infrastructure of transmission distribution lines in places that that don't have them. So it lowers your footprint and allows for access. It can take any kind of fuel, biogas, natural gas, landfill gas, all that stuff. So it makes it more usable. And at the end of the day, it'll produce electricity at a much higher rate. So people should use it, not because it's green, but because it's affordable and it's also green.
Thank you, Caio. Jim Rogers, an hour ago next door, you said of Duke Energy, our mission in the 21st century is to make communities the most efficient in the world and be an optimizer. The issue is, how do we get paid for it? Your 5 minutes, please, on your audit of transforming your business into something which is sustainable.
Well, I think first and foremost, our industry, deeply embedded in the culture of our industry, is the concept of safety. We're the third largest operator of nuclear in the United States, and so safety obviously is very critical and it's top of mind with every person that works in our nuclear plants. But because of the business we're in, it is embedded in our culture. So the question really becomes, in my judgment, how do we embed sustainability and translate it into part of our culture, where every decision, where every action that we make it in a way that's consistent with sustainable objectives. And so this is more, in my sense of the word, within the company, it's more about embedding sustainability in our culture in the same way we were able to do it with safety. We have developed what we call our lens of sustainability, that every action, that every decision, person who is making these decisions has to really answer 4 questions. They have to answer first the question of the big picture, the connection. What is the interplay of this decision in terms of financial, environmental, how does that, and economically for the future, how does those interact? The second question they must ask before they make a decision is really a question around efficiency. Is this the most efficient way to do it, given the limited resources we have on this planet? Is there a way to do this to use less materials, less water, less energy, and to recognize that we need to be as efficient as possible? Are there ways in addressing this we can do it differently or to achieve that objective? The third is balance. Are we balancing the planet, profits, and people right? Are we creating win-win-win solutions with this action or with this decision? And lastly, and maybe most importantly, and this goes back to the earlier comment, is this decision a good decision from the long term versus a good short-term decision? And the way we talk about that is we call it the grandchildren's test. Will our grandchildren look at this decision when they're our age and say, that was a good decision then and is still a good decision today? So if you go to our website, you will see what we call the Duke Energy Way, the filter that we use and that we ask every leader, every person in our company to use this lens in making decisions going forward. But we've gone a step beyond it because we want it embedded deep in their psyche. We've asked them to put together a personal sustainability plan. What are you going to do at home? What something different are you going to do that honors these principles, but more importantly reflects these questions that we're asking you to ask with respect to every decision? So the key here for us is to have every decision, when you're such a large organization, where if we could make sustainability with real questions, with real answers, and have it as embedded in our psyche and in our culture as safety, then we're on the way to making a difference. And your question at the beginning on this optimization, I clearly view we're not in the business in the future of selling kilowatt hours. We're going to be in the business of optimizing the use of electricity by our customers, one against the other, and understand the algorithms of the usage of all the devices of all our customers and be able to write software where we optimize it against the mother grid. That, to me, is the new business model that's evolving. And when you ask the 4 questions that I just described, the answer would be positive in every one that's asked.
Before I go to Chang Sui, can I just pick up on that one issue about embedding of the principles? How much pushback and resistance have you faced in your company, even if these are the principles on your website now?
Change is difficult. Change is difficult.
That sounds like a big resistance.
Huh?
That sounds like you've been experiencing big resistance.
Even if something is good for people, they often reject it because it's different than what they had before. So in a sense, what you really have to do is the leaders throughout the company have to walk the talk. You have to ask the questions when you review a project to say, did you ask and answer these 4 questions? And quite frankly, we haven't converted everyone yet, but we're working hard on making it a part of our culture. And I would use the example of safety. We still have industrial accidents. But the reality is that it takes a long time to build it into the culture.
Thanks, Jim. We'll build on that in discussion in a short while. Chang Sui, I should remind everybody that you were Vice Minister of the chemical industry. Therefore, you could perhaps focus your 5 minutes of remarks, particularly on how a heavy industry like that in China has adapted to the principle of sustainability, but still maintaining growth.
Okay, as you know, fossil energy at this time being consists of 91% of our energy consumption. And by the year 2020, it will be reduced to 85%, but still the majority of in our energy consumption. So what we are doing is to raise the energy efficiency of fossil energy. I'm leading the Process System Engineering Research Center in East China Science and Engineering University. Our center did some work. One is to optimizing the refinery and petrochemical factories. Second is we developed a multi-nozzle coal gasifier. And now Around 10 gasifiers is in operation and 40 is under construction. So we are now exporting our technology to the United States. Another company supported by me is in negotiating to export our technology of an integrated coal utilization system to a Western country. So I think this is we are now doing the first. Second is, in my opinion, the coming industrial revolution should be the energy revolution led by new energy. So in the new energy area, I'm leading a research center in the Chinese Academy of Sciences. And what we are doing is mainly focus on the economic and the policy side. And we calculated the economic environmental cost for the year 2005. We found the environmental cost caused by low energy efficiency, environmental pollution, and also the damage of ecological system equal 13.5% of our GDP. And that year, our GDP only increased by 10.4%. That means we relieve our environmental debts to our children or grandchildren. So by doing this, we just justify the usage of new energy and justify the necessity to subsidizing the new energy. And recently, we just finished a project is comparing the coal-fired power plant with wind power plant by the environmental cost. And the third is we are now doing the necessity of carbon tax. That means we need to tax the coal-fired plant to subsidize the solar and the wind power plant. And we made our proposal. I don't want to go detailed because the time limit. And on the other hand, we are now promoting the carbon trade in China because if you talk about the carbon trade resource, China is abundant. But at this time being, we need to develop our own carbon trade market. So in this case, we are now talking with Tianjin to build we call it Green Finance Research Center. But this is just in negotiation. That's what I'm doing now.
Thank you very much. Right. There are microphones. Grab a microphone if you want to join the discussion. But can I ask all of you, maybe none of you want to give me an answer which suggests that this is a problem. Has sustainability cost you and lost you money? Or is it always something which makes you money? Mr. Xi.
Well, because I'm in sustainable business, so we rely on this sustainability to be profitable. So certainly it's not for our case. And but I guess certainly, for example, in Chinese government, in some local government in Yangtze Delta region, the government had decided to shut down some energy consumption or pollution companies. Like in our city of Wuxi, in the last 3 years, every year they shut down 600 companies.
Do you sense this is still a resistance, though, that people, many managers, directors, fear that moving towards sustainability will lose them money and cost them profit?
Certainly there are some, yes.
Harry Bhatia.
The way we looked at it, that if you take the triple bottom line way you measure sustainability, always in the economic sense, we found it very profitable. On the environment level, we felt that you need to make initial investment. On the long term, definitely it is very profitable. At the social level, I think we need to incur extra cost. And there the results are more longer term. And I think that's where the company needs to create what you call a shared value, where we can both the society and the company could benefit. especially in countries like India, where there's 40% of the people still below are the poverty line. I think as corporations, we feel a bit responsible that we need to invest those resources to bring some of those capabilities that we have among the communities around you. But I think on the longer term, it will give us a huge payback.
Caio.
For our Fortune 50 customers, us being a green product is definitely the entry ticket for us to be able to walk into their office and have a conversation. But when they make the financial decision to buy it, it's a CFO level decision, and it's purely based on rate of return and what they get. A company like Walmart will not be installing our product if they weren't saving money.
Jim Rogers.
I think that the challenge for our industry is that the real price of electricity in the United States has been flat for 50 years. As I look out over the next 20 years, the real price of electricity is going to go up as we retire and replace high-emitting old coal plants, as we replace them with either gas plants or with nuclear plants or solar or wind. So I think we're in a period of rising prices. So the risk of transforming our fleet is a risk that we will be taking, because at the end of the day, when you're regulated, and if your prices are going up, you're in an environment where the likelihood that they will reduce your return on your investment is great. I'll give you a for instance. We were the first in the country to start building a co-gasification plant. We started out using GE technology. We thought it would cost $2 billion to build it, and we're now have revised it to $2.8 billion. This will be the cleanest coal plant in the world, the lowest carbon intensity, lowest sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, mercury footprint. We have at risk $800 million. It has yet to be determined whether we can get a return on that investment, but that's where we took a chance to scale the technology and yet still be able to use coal. And in the U.S., we have great resources of coal, but that is a risk that is one that we've taken, and that we have put dollars at risk. The jury's out in terms of how it works out. But those are the kind of risks that we're going to have to take in a period of rising costs.
So you haven't got an absolutely clear answer about whether sustainability has cost you and lost you money or made you money?
I think the mindset is going to save us money. I'll give you one example. Just at one of our gas plants, going through this sustainability filter, our team found a way to ramp up and down our gas plants in a way that really saved us almost $4 million a year just in changing the way we ramped it up and down, because they asked the question, can we do it using less natural gas? That's a small amount, but when you start to add that up, it really makes a difference. So you have to look at big projects, you have to look at everyday action, but I believe in the long term it will save us money over the much longer term.
Cheng Sui, and quickly, with all the research and monitoring you're doing, what is the attitude of enterprises in China at the moment about whether sustainability essentially is a risk to a director or something where they now understand it can make the money?
Actually, from a short point of view, maybe they will lose money. But from a long point of view, it will cost effective. Actually, we have although there are resistance and inertia to the sustainable development, but our government is a strong government. So we decided by the end of this year, the energy consumption per GDP should reduce 20% compared on the 2005 basis. If you cannot reach this, your plant will shut down or the CEO will be punished. So this is what we can do. So I think although there are resistance, they dare not to oppose this. So
I think I need to ask for clarification on what kind of punishment there is for failing to embrace sustainability?
By the end of this year, you can see. I cannot tell you at this time. maybe you can ask the Premier Wen.
All right, okay, fine. There are several people I already want to talk, please. Can you all introduce yourselves?
Christopher Graves, Ogilvy Public Relations Worldwide. Very quickly, two things. You can toss it to whomever you want, Nick.
You can toss it, Chris. You're good at this.
All right, great. Then I'd like to ask both Mr. Rogers and Mr. Chung, is there a possible law of unintended consequences that's going to happen in all this? Meaning, with the best intentions, perhaps electric cars at this time is not the best thing for China if most of its power is relatively dirty coal provided in China. So is it possible good intentions will have bad backfires? And second, nobody mentioned water. Isn't it likely we'll run out of water before we'll ever get headway on mitigating carbon footprints?
Jim, you've just been talking about this in your last session. Do you just want to underline that water issue?
Well, I think water is the oil of the 21st century in terms of being challenged. You can make the world aware of water issues, but all water issues are local. And we've seen significant challenges in parts of our country where we hadn't experienced water problems in the past. And so that will be an issue going forward. I mean, our company alone cycles through over 4 trillion gallons of water in our operation. We return 98% of it to the rivers that we take it out of, but the other 2% we lose through evaporation, which eventually comes back. But water usage will be a major issue. And as I said in my session, that the United States is the #1 exporter of water in the world by the food that we export, because it takes so much water to grow the food, and not many people think of it exactly that way. But the plug-in hybrid, I mean, to answer your question, electric vehicles, I think, are the key in the United States. It might be a second car at first as the technology evolves, but we must find a way to wean ourselves from oil, and we're going to find a way.
But that's not quite the question. I mean, I've heard it at several transport forums. It's all very well having electric cars and electric car technology. It's the drain on the power supplies. That's the premise of the question. I was about to say that, Chris. So that's the second part of the question. Can I ask all of you that, please?
Here's the math. The math is that we design our systems to reach peak. At night, our ability to recharge these units without adding significant amount of generation, we can charge millions of cars without building new generation. That's first. Second, if you plug in to the dirtiest coal plant in the United States and you charge that car, the combination will be a smaller carbon footprint, and the consequences, it will be much cheaper than that gallon of gas. The other point is at night, if you're a nuclear operator like we are, virtually all the units that are running at night are nuclear with 0 greenhouse gases. So if you charge the car at night, you're looking at 0 greenhouse gases both up and downstream.
Zhengrong, is that a very fundamental concern about the business of moving towards electric cars, the generation of the power, but also the fact that it's going to be dirty? You're involved in solar energy.
Yeah, I think electric car plus solar, that will be the solution, ultimate solution. There's no dirty coal. You don't need to worry about it.
All right, but what's the time scale to get over the dirty coal, to recharge that number of cars?
I think it's a matter of, as you said, some people see, relatively high electricity price from solar is a cost. Right? So, I mean, if people perceive that now, 15 to 18 US cents per kilowatt hour, electricity from solar is affordable, I think people should start to use it now, today.
KR, you're involved in generating energy as well. I mean, is that a legitimate challenge or rider to the business of moving speedily towards electric transport?
Well, if you look at most of the renewables, Ours is what we develop at Bloom is a 24/7 box, but if you look at photovoltaic or wind, which is a very significant fraction of the renewables, they're intermittent power sources. They only operate when the sun shines or the wind blows. So you have a storage problem inherent with it, and instead of trying to create a storage for storage's sake and trying to pump it into the grid, if we had a vast network of electric cars that become the de facto storage, it actually helps the grid. So from that perspective, a plug-in electric or a fully electric vehicle is a complement to the intermittent renewable sources, and it's a good thing.
Right, please. Who's got the microphone? Who's got a microphone? Please. And someone else get the microphone too.
Thank you very much. My name is Amir from Malaysia. I've got a simple question here for Duke Energy. Do you believe that liberalized electricity markets, as opposed to a tightly regulated market with vertically integrated utilities, can help with the sustainable agenda? Thank you.
Who is that for?
Mr. Rogers, please.
Mr. Rogers. Jim, could you hear it?
No.
No. Could you just repeat it, please? The microphone wasn't fully on.
Do you believe that a liberalized electricity market, as opposed to a tightly regulated market with a vertically integrated utility, can help in the sustainable development agenda, or otherwise?
Liberalized market.
I'm of the view, because in the United States we have started down the road of liberalization. Many states liberalized, others didn't. I think you have a better chance of building new generation in the United States in a heavily regulated, vertically integrated market than you do a liberalized market for a variety of different reasons. And it goes specifically to the regulation. So I think if you want to build nuclear, if you want renewable portfolio standards, if you want plug-in hybrids, a heavily regulated, vertically integrated business, they're going to set the incentives right and the targets right. It's going to happen. And in the liberalized market, it is less likely to happen. We see that in the U.S. today. No nuclear plants are proposed in the markets that are liberalized. There's no new coal plants. There's nothing being built in those markets. So again, people forget that, particularly now, that it is in the regulated markets where real advances are being made.
Anyone else out there? I can't see any hands going up. Is anyone wanting to speak, but I can't? Yes, please. Microphone here.
Hi, my name is Sindoor Mittal. I'm from a company called Welspun Energy in India. We are a IPP in India in the thermal and solar space. My question is regarding sustainability and growth precisely. If you look at the US in the 60s and the 70s going through the high growth phase, and again look at China in the 80s, 90s, and even today going through the extremely high growth phase, India is where these countries were at that point. However, at that point, the focus was never on sustainability, and today that is the case. How do you justify, in a country like India, where half of the population doesn't have proper access even to electricity, how do you justify sustainability, and who's going to pay for that?
Harry Bhatia.
If you look at sustainability in India, two things. You are talking about inclusion, where we include a large section of society and into the mainstream. And the cost that we are talking about is the transition from, let's say, coal, which is dirty, to gas or even thermal. So there is certainly going to be a cost attached to that transition by when you are trying to include a large section of society. But this cost of transition is becoming less and less, because If you really look at it from now, in India also, there are gas-based plants being set up, which is competing with the coal-based plant, and the costs are being averaged out. Certainly, when you take it to solar, there is high subsidy involved. And I don't think solar will be a large component in the next 20 years, if you take it as a percentage. Certainly, nuclear would be much more, as you have seen, that we have made the nuclear deal, and that is where now the new, more, less carbon-emitting power will come from. So I think we will need to have a balance. We can't quickly transition immediately from coal to completely gas or solar power.
But Harry, can I just pick up, there's another spirit to that conversation, which is about, particularly in India, where the government has embraced sustainability dramatically, particularly since the election of last year. Just picking up on what Jim Rogers said, we have not convinced everyone yet. How are you, in your portfolio of companies, convincing your staff at every level of the new principles of sustainability and how they have to embed it within your company?
You know, in our companies, what we have seen in the last 20 years, that sustainability has given a huge payback, actually. If you really look at it from all points of view, if you take, whether you use lean techniques for conservation, which could be included for energy or for recycle of water, or even raw materials. You know, in the pharmaceutical company, we recycle solvents, which is much cleaner for the environment. So almost, and I think this experience is almost in all the companies, that sustainability does save cost. The investment that you have to make is in the social side of it, where the impact would be more long-term. But I think the very question that you ask, sustainability, if we don't have sustainability, then the business will not exist. So whatever cost that we incur is a real cost.
And so your staff and employees understand that?
Absolutely. Because otherwise the business will not exist in the next 10 years. So I think it is very important for each of our employees to really, as Jim said, of course we don't have that very organized system that every decision those questions are asked. But we, in our Sustainability Council, deal with all these issues. And almost all the major decisions have to comply to sustainability. And guidelines like GRI, etc., are being followed.
Jim.
Nick, I'd like to try to answer a question in a little different way. I want you to go back in time to like 1900 in the United States, when we started down the road of providing universal access to every home and business in the country. And if you go into Cleveland or Pittsburgh or any of these cities, they were messes in terms of they were burning coal in fireplaces and wood. The electrification in our country, basically, not only were we able to scale up and make it affordable and reliable, but we cleaned up. People forgot what the cities looked like before electrification. There is a clear link between prosperity and electrification. And in my judgment, I see this in China, I see this in India. If you're going to have a sustainable economy, you've got to create prosperity. And the only way you create prosperity is to make electricity available to everybody and have the universal access. So my view is you have to look at sustainability through that light and recognize there's a period where you're making some trade-offs and some of the options aren't perfect. But I look back over this 100-year period, and our environment is a lot cleaner today than it was when we started. And now we're making it even cleaner by cleaning up. Our company alone has spent $5 billion just in the last 10 years retrofitting for SOx, NOx, and mercury. So I think this link between prosperity and electrification of the country is really critical and can't be ignored. And those of us in industrial countries that have already provided universal access cannot stand in the way of that for countries that have not yet achieved it?
Dr. Shi.
I think there's a very important aspect we shouldn't forget when we, design the path of economic growth, as you say, in India. Just give you an example. The technology is developed every day. I remember 20 years ago, when United States, West country all used VHS, there was not much in China. But China bypassed that stage. China started with DVD, okay? So why? Because China started later. China adopted the newest technology. So now we're talking sustainable development. There's so many sustainable energy technology being developed. So when Indians started to grow your economy so fast, you have to adopt most updated sustainable energy, sustainable technology in every aspect of your economic development. And give the solar, for example. In the last 2 years, solar panel price has been reduced by more than 100%. We see clearly that many countries like in APMEA region, Asia Pacific, India, Middle East, Africa, they couldn't afford using solar. Now the market is booming here. So that's already indicated, the country like India, lack of electricity is a good idea to really, put up all the, high voltage grid across the countryside. Or maybe it's a better option, just use a cheap solar panel and a battery system to electrify the whole country. So I think, technology develops with time. Don't forget that.
Thank you. Can I give Cheng Sui the last word? Cheng Sui, with your various hats on, particularly in foundations, Academy of Sciences and so on, and to prevent many more people being punished for not understanding sustainability, this issue of education and trickle-down from the political leadership, not just in China, but there are many people from developing countries here who need to understand the principles and how you distribute the principles of sustainability. So no one is in any doubt about the advantages as opposed to what they perceive as the negative side to them and their business. What are you learning about the education process here, corporately?
Well, actually, I think that educating people is very important. So the Chinese Communist Party of China put forward we call the scientific outlook of development. That means we should put people first and pursuing a comprehensive, balanced, and sustainable development. And now this outlook is learning by all Chinese in China, all Chinese inside China, and also we have adopted this outlook and to formulate the different policies. One very important lesson is, in the late 30 years, we had enjoyed a 90% growth rate. But at this time being, I think it's time to change our development pattern from purchasing a high growth rate to persuading a sustainable, balanced development. So that's why we set up our growth rate 8% for this year. And I think for the next few years, we will put more resources in developing new energy, in developing environmental protection. And last but not least is we are now put more resource in education. And I believe, only education can guarantee our day of tomorrow. Science and technology only can guarantee our tomorrow. Economy only can guarantee us today. So I think we just put forward announced a very ambitious program for improving our education system.
But final question, but how much is educating the old traditional mindsets of the middle career, higher career managers, how much of that is still a massive challenge in China?
Well, as I think you need to use the hard side and the soft side, both. From the hard side, you use the discipline. You use the governmental instruction. And on the soft side, we have trained them in different institutes We have it's in Shanghai, in Beijing, and in other places to train the high-level managers. And if they still resist to change, I think the results will be not so good for them.
I think at that point I will close the session.
I think it's the hard side.
I won't ask what the punishment is across the world, Jim, what you do in your company. Thank you all very much indeed. This is the theme of the conference on sustainability and driving growth. Thank you very much indeed.